Hello and welcome to Ag PhD. I'm Darren Hefty.
And I'm Brian Hefty. Thanks for joining us today. You know, corn planting is really getting going around the country, but we're already thinking about soybean planting and what we're going to do for seed treatments this spring. There are many new options. We'll talk about those today.
There are a lot of early season decisions to make, and on corn we need to get residual herbicides out there in order to maximize our yield potential. We'll talk about some of your options.
We've got an iron talk coming up later in the show and a tough to control weed of the week. But first, here's this week's Farm Basics.
Farm Basics is brought to you by the Liberty Link trait and Liberty herbicide from Bayer. The most reliable weed management solution, Liberty Link and Liberty herbicide are the link to efficient row crop production and sustainable weed management.
During our Farm Basics time today, we're going to talk about one of a farmer's least favorite things, mud.
Okay, now when we're talking about this, we're talking about getting into a field to plant. Is it too muddy to be out in the field, or is it not that muddy? And when we think about it, we want to run the planter out in the field, but for many farmers, they didn't get their fertilizer applied or their plant food applied last fall. They've got to get that done. They may have some spring tillage to do to kind of level that field out and make a nice seed bed. I mean, there's a lot of reasons that farmers need to get out in the field. But when we think about, well, is it too wet out there or not? It all depends on who that farmer is and what he thinks he can get done.
Yeah, but as a general statement, this is kind of what we've learned over the years. If you take your soil and you kind of try to make a mud ball, and if you can make a mud ball in your hand, it's obviously too wet.
If you can hit your brother at a dead sprint at
right.
about 50 yards out, then it's definitely too wet.
But if that soil crumbles, then we're in pretty good shape. And if you try to ribbon that out or feather that out as you're pushing that out of your hand, you get a pretty good idea. Hey, if that soil is sticking together, we've got a problem. And here's one of the issues that most people don't think about, and that is sidewall compaction or sidewall smear when a farmer's out there planting. The problem with that is you create a little V when you're out planting. Well, if you have that sidewall smear, the roots then are not able to grow through those sidewalls, and it limits where your roots are to right down that little trench. It really hurts in terms of both yield, and also it increases the lodging potential.
Well, we saw it last year too. We actually had some injury from our pre-emerge herbicides where we had sidewall smear and those trenches never really closed. So you could look right out in the field and see where the planter ran when it ran in too wet of conditions, and that the trench was actually open. You could see the seed. So when herbicides got applied, they actually got sprayed right onto the seed, which isn't good. You want to have a safe level of soil over the top of the seed in order to protect it from the weather, but also from herbicides that may be put on in that field.
And every farmer has a little bit different soil type. Like a lot of our ground, for example, once I see that the gravel road is fit, there's no mud at all on the gravel road, generally speaking, with many of our fields, I know I can go out in the field. And it's just a little simple thing that I've kind of figured out over the years. But we have some really heavy soils that even then I got to wait probably 2 or 3 more days. So it's just something where a farmer, after years of farming the same fields, starts to have a pretty good idea when it's too muddy or when he better just stay out of there, or when he can actually go back.
All right, here's the question though, Brian. If the crop insurance deadline that you have to have the crop in by is coming up, that's where everybody starts to panic. That, you know what, let's just say for an example, in your area, it was May 20th. You had to have the corn in, otherwise crop insurance isn't going to give you 100% coverage on that field. A lot of farmers, when it gets to be May 18th or 19th, they think, man, I got 2 days of planting left. I got to get it done right now.
Yep.
Maybe it's good enough out there. I'm going to give it a shot.
So a lot of people will say, well, I'm just going to mud it in because I think that's a lot better than doing nothing. And that's the tough thing. Your debate is, by planting early and it's a little bit too muddy, is that better off than waiting 2 or 3 weeks sometimes? And yeah, I don't have the muddy conditions anymore, but now I'm 2 or 3 weeks later. So I wish we farmed in a perfect world, but unfortunately we don't. So those are some of the choices that a farmer has to make.
Well, it's not easy being a farmer, and especially in the spring when all farmers are excited to get their crop in the ground. When conditions aren't fit, they have to ask themselves the question, is it too muddy or
Hey,
not?
one other thing I was going to bring up real quick. We talk an awful lot about good drainage on the farm, and farmers over the years have done tillage to try to dry their soils out. Well, with tile, and when farmers are adding tile to fields and lowering the water table, that means less tillage is necessary. We're also finding certain tillage tools will create less compaction. A disc, for example, creates way more compaction in the soil, which is obviously harmful, than a Salford machine or a Super Coulter or a Twister. One of these vertical tillage machines, they don't create near the compaction level. So you have to pick the right tillage tool in some of those cases too. There are all these things that farmers are trying to factor in every spring.
Well, one question they also may have, Brian, is will tillage help us, or will a herbicide be our solution for our weed of the week? Can you identify this week's weed?
What's next in weed control technology? Roundup Ready 2 Extend soybeans will provide tolerance to dicamba and glyphosate and will be built on the Genuity Roundup Ready to Yield trait. See them in action at extendfollowafield.com.
Can I grow my crop without the expense of fertilizer additives?
You can. Conditions forcing you to make some tough choices? Choose agricultural liquid fertilizers and you won't need stabilizers or nutrient managers, eliminating expense and hassle. Millions of acres and years of replicated research have proven that with ProGerminator, SureK, High Energy and MicroLink, you can grow a great crop without costly additives. To learn more and find a dealer near you, visit agroliquid.com.
You can put more bushels in your bin without expanding the farm with YieldTrack. The new 24-row planter from Titan Machinery features the Case IH Early Riser planting system. YieldTrack will take you to the field first with extra flotation come spring. The tracks eliminate pinched rows and reduce compaction. All 22 and 30-inch YieldTracks come loaded with Case IH technology, including cable drive and AccuRow. Grab more bushels from every acre with YieldTrack from Titan Machinery.
Wake up, breakfast is served. Your roots crave P. Most of your applied P gets tied up in the soil, a natural phenomenon known as phosphorus fixation. Fix the problem with Avail Phosphorus Fertilizer Enhancer. Avail makes more P available to your roots, here, here, and here. Increasing P availability can lead to increased P uptake in the plant. That's more P, and more P. More phosphorus for your crop can mean more results in your bin. An average of 9.6 bushels per acre of corn. Breakfast is served. Supercharge your P with Avail.
Capello corn headers are designed for producers who expect more. Expect more grain in your bin. Expect an industry-leading 2-year manufacturer's warranty. Expect Capello-designed chopping and folding options that save you time and money. And whether red, green, or yellow, expect row size options that fit your operation because all producers deserve the best. Expect Capello. It's ahead above the rest.
A proven herbicide for decades, Dicamba can provide Burndown residual control of tough and resistant weeds for up to 14 days. That's another reason why farmers will use Dicamba for years to come. Brought to you by Roundup Ready Plus Weed Management Solutions.
When it comes to soybean seed, variety is a big thing, but now the seed treatment options are equally as important in selection.
Well, I think it's huge. Number one, soybean seed is expensive now compared to what it used to be. You want to protect every last seed you've got out there. You really want every seed to grow. But in addition to that, we have a lot better options than we used to in terms of the seed treatment. So we have better insecticides, better fungicides, and there are even biological products now where we've gotten proven yield. So it's kind of exciting. It's something that we can do to not only protect the seed, but also give us a yield bump and give us an overall better return on investment.
Well, let's start off with the fungicide and insecticide portion, because primarily that's all getting marketed as one thing, whether it's Acceleron or Innovate or whatever.
It is, but I mean, the insecticides are basically all the same. They're the neonicotinoids. It's either Gaucho, Poncho, or Cruiser. Then they almost all have metalaxyl, Apron, Allegiance, something like that. Okay, that's mainly for Pythium.
That's for Pythium control.
Yep. So you've got 2 components out of the 3 or 4 that are going to be the same in almost everybody's product. Now you get over to the other fungicides. That's where we start separating them a little bit, and we have a lot better options today.
If you've got good drainage out in your soybean fields, that helps you a ton, and you don't have to worry nearly as much about many of these diseases. Now, we've got good drainage in most of our fields across our farm. we're still seeing a benefit applying these fungicide and insecticide seed treatments. So don't think, all right, my drainage is pretty good, I'm never going to have a problem. Even in dry soils, we have certain diseases that can impact soybeans that the seed treatments will definitely help you with.
When it comes to that other component or other couple of components in there, like in Acceleron, there's headline and Xemium. So basically Preaxor that they're putting in and on the seed, but every company has something a little bit different. The point is, with that other component or other components, we're after the other things like Phytophthora and Rhizoctonia. Those are two of the main diseases that we're targeting. We've already talked about the Pythium, but Rhizoctonia and Phytophthora are very severe in some cases. And so Darren already mentioned, yeah, we're seeing good return on investment, but I can't tell you that every year. We don't know. Some years we have worse disease problems than others. It depends a lot on the weather, but it also depends on, well, just what happened in our soil over the course of the last year. We just don't know. What we're trying to say here is you've got to look at the average over a 3-year or 5-year period as opposed to just looking at one time, 1 year. Yeah, you might see 5 bushels this year, you might see 0 next year. So it just depends on when you do it, when you run your trials, what you're going to see.
Okay, so on our farm, we're always using that fungicide and insecticide component. We think that it's going to pay over the years for us. Now,
well, we know it has paid for us over the years.
The other thing that we'll always use is inoculant. What we're talking about here is rhizobia bacteria that are going to colonize on the roots of our soybean plants and make nodules. This helps bring nitrogen from the air into our plants. The more of these bacteria we can get to colonize on our roots, the more nitrogen we're going to produce for our plants, and the greater our yield potential is going to be.
And the good news is with a lot of the new inoculants that are out there, they have much better strains of bacteria that are better at producing nitrogen for the plant. So even if you're in a soybean on soybean rotation, you can probably still get a decent return on investment from these products because they only cost a couple bucks an acre. If you're going to gain $10 or $12 from a $2 investment, that sounds to me like it paid better than anything in the world in terms of an ROI percentage.
Well, or they have a product that costs $2 like this, but in order to see if it was a significant difference, it would have to be like a $20 difference in return. Yeah. Like, I don't need a 10-to-1 return. No. If I can get a 2-to-1 return, I'd be very happy on my farm. So, you just have to look at some of those things for what they are. And even your yield monitor, if you're comparing treated versus untreated with your yield monitor, you're going to have to get those breaks down pretty small in terms of yield differences. So maybe you're looking at 40 bushel beans, you're going to have to be able to see the difference between 40.5 and 40 and 39.5 to see if that inoculant really paid, because you're not always going to get big gains. A lot of times it's going to be a half a bushel or a bushel.
Okay, here's the other thing we want you to at least consider on your farm. You may not have used a biological product, or as I would call them, a natural product, something that has beneficial bacteria or beneficial fungi, or maybe both. But we've used Quickrits with good success. We've used Challenge 2050 in furrow with good success. There are different products out there that you may want to try just because we've had yield gain with some of these things. And like Quickrits, for example, that we put right on the seed, we're using that on corn, we're using it on soybeans, we're using it on wheat, and we're having results. But every farm's a little different. The main thing is we just want you to understand all these big companies are investing billions of dollars now in research on that type of product. So I know it might seem a little strange to you and everything, but at least try some of these things out. If they don't pay, hey, they don't pay. But what we're finding is farmers across the country and really across the world are using biological products and starting to have pretty decent success. I know we certainly have on our farm.
And one last thing to think about is nematodes. If you have a serious soybean cyst nematode problem on your farm, there are a couple different things you may consider. And there are a number of different products out there. The two most popular ones, though, have been Votivo, which basically repels nematodes, keeps them away from the roots, and also Clarivo, which is fairly new. That's one that actually kills nematodes. Now, both of these products cost a little bit of money, so you're going to have to see if you can get a return on your investment on your farm. Personally, for me, I wish they were in furrow treatments rather than soybean seed treatments. So that way we can variable rate them across the field. So when we know we've got hot spots, we can kick the rate up. And then on parts of the field where we know don't have nematodes, we could pull them out. I think the return on investment would be much greater that way. However, it could still be a good return for you if you have high soybean cyst counts.
Well, once again, there are a lot of things now to take a look at with these soybean seed treatments, from fungicide to insecticide, inoculants, biological products, nematode products. We just want you to consider some of these things and try some new things out on your farm. There is a lot of new good technology out there.
Well, all these seed treatments are great, but they won't do a thing to control our weed of the week. We'll show you what will stop this tough weed later in the show.
Whether you're feeding cattle, milking cows, or baling hay, the work on your farm is never done. which is why you need equipment that works as hard as you do. Get the efficiency and versatility you need with Case IH. From Farmall compact and utility tractors to balers and mowers, all Case IH equipment is designed with one thing in mind: getting the job done. To learn more, visit caseih.com/livestock.
If you could see how nitrogen loss causes yield loss, you'd fix it. So fix it right, with the stabilizer proven to reduce all 3 ways nitrogen escapes. Nutrisphere N Nitrogen Fertilizer Manager. It keeps nitrogen in a more readily available form longer. With today's market and environment, it's a high priority to keep your nitrogen on track. To higher yield with Nutrisphere N.
A farmer's attention to detail is what makes the difference. You take the time for service management because you know how vital it is to your operation. You service your field like everything else because soil sampling makes all the difference and gets the results you want. Download the app Soil Test Pro and start grid sampling today. Keep your farm growing strong. The more you test, the more you know.
I wish I could side dress more than just nitrogen.
You can. While side dressing is efficient for nitrogen applications, you can also use that opportunity to apply PK and the micronutrients your crop needs. AgroLiquid's Calibrate and MicroLink products allow you to nutritionally balance your side dress application efficiently and economically. Let Agriculture Liquid Fertilizer help you make your next crop a bumper crop. For more info, visit agroliquid.com.
If you watch Ag PhD TV, you'll love the new Ag PhD radio show each weekday on Rural Radio Sirius XM Channel 80. This is Darren Hefty. On the new Ag PhD radio program, we'll take live callers and provide the agronomic information and brotherly banter you've come to expect from Ag PhD. We'll feature a Back 40 segment where we talk to farmers and agronomists around the country to share what's going on with crop production. And it wouldn't be Ag PhD without addressing a pest of the day. Tune in to the Ag PhD radio show each weekday at 2 p.m. Central on Rural Radio Sirius XM Channel 80.
Corn, pre-emerge herbicides, we don't have a lot of time, but we got a lot to talk about here.
Well, we do, and many of these products can be used either before you plant or they can be used after you plant. The difference is you need rainfall to get them to activate, and if you want to get the most out of them, in most cases you want to put them on before you plant just so you can have a little bit more of a window to catch some moisture.
Now, in conventional corn, we still talk a lot about getting a good grass control herbicide down like Harness, Surpass, Outlook Duo. We want the full rate out there, and then follow with a good broadleaf killer post-emerge that may give you a little bit of activity on grasses as well. Things like Callisto, Laudis, Impact, or even Status, combined with a little bit of atrazine. So that's the conventional side. When you look at the Roundup Ready side, or even Liberty Link corn, what we want to see is something that has some broadleaf activity down more than just what Harness, Surpass, Outlook, or Duo would offer.
Well, Roundup's fantastic on most grasses, and most of the Roundup resistant weeds across the country are broadleaf weeds. So if we can get a broadleaf component in the pre-emerge herbicide to help it out so we don't need the Roundup to control that weed later on, that's a good thing. And if there are a few more escape grasses, it's not that big a deal in terms of weed control. We can still kill the weeds with Roundup post-emerge. Now, when we think about maximum yield, we really need an awesome pre-emerge herbicide that doesn't let hardly any weeds pop up later. So I'm concerned that guys are cutting the rates back too far on these pre's, trying to save a couple of bucks, and they're losing lots of dollars post-emerge that they don't really see, because for each 1 inch of weed growth, you're losing at least 5 bushels of yield.
Yeah, and I actually think that's pretty low. But anyway, here's where I would go with this. I'd use either Balance Flex down, or Bayer also talks quite a bit about Corvus, which is going to have the Balance Flex plus another
carbazone methyl, which is an ALS herbicide.
Yeah, or I would consider Verdict or Sure Start Triple Flex. Sure Start and Triple Flex are the same thing. So you've got these different options that are out there. They're all going to give you some grass control, but what we're really after is that added broadleaf control, because typically with Roundup resistant weeds, they're going to be broadleaves.
Let's compare these options that you've got. First of all, I'll start off with Verdict. We're talking about a strong rate of Sharpen plus a very light rate, in my opinion, of Outlook. So Outlook is the just straight grass control product. It does some on small seeded broadleafs, but at that rate, you're basically just going to get some foxtail control. Then the Sharpen in there has great residual on broadleaf weeds, and it does an awesome job on Burndown. So with Verdict, I really like that in the no-till system, but it can be used in conventional till as well.
All right, let's talk about the HPPD options. There's Balance Flex, Corvus that contains Balance Flex, and also Lumax. Now, some people might throw Halex GT in there as well, but that's really a post product. So with the Lumax and with the Corvus, you've got good residual control for both grasses and broadleaves because you got two different active ingredients. With Balance Flex, it's one active ingredient that's much stronger on broadleaves than it is on grass. But either way, we like any of those products simply because they're pretty good on the Roundup resistant weeds. Just keep in mind that if you use an HPPD down, in other words Callisto or Balance Flex down, we don't want to use those post-emerge. So that means you're probably going to have to go with Status, Banvel, Clarity, maybe Buctro post-emerge, but avoid Callisto, Laudis, Impact, or Armazon post-emerge. So just kind of keep that in mind. You got to look at the whole program and what you're doing for the whole season, and don't use that same active ingredient twice.
Then we look at Triple Flex and Sure Start. They've got 3 different active ingredients in there. You've got the Harness or Surpass component. Then you've got the Python and Stinger that make up the broadleaf component. Python is an ALS type product. Stinger is a growth regulator. So you got 3 different modes of action out there. These have been really popular products across the upper Midwest. They do a nice job on small seeded broadleaves. They also have some reach on some of the larger seeded broadleaves like Cocklebur, Sunflower, Velvet Leaf. They aren't going to be perfect, but they do much better than some of the other products that we've talked about.
Yeah, and they are a little bit less expensive too. I don't think they're quite as good as like a Verdict would be, or the Sharpen component really on some of the small seeded broadleaves, but it's pretty close. So anyway, our whole point here is whatever you're going to use, we just want you using a good pre-emerge herbicide in corn. Don't think you're going to go 1 pass. It's always going to take 2 passes if you want great weed control. And I mean, let's face it, yeah, commodity prices are down some, but there's still plenty of potential out there to make good money on the farm. We know that weeds hurt yield. We know that weeds hurt net income. So make sure you're doing everything you can to control your weeds, especially if they're Roundup resistant.
Well, one of the weeds you may be after this year is our Weed of the Week. We'll show you how to control this weed coming up next.
The Weed of the Week is sponsored by the Enlist Weed Control System from Dow AgroSciences, a new herbicide and trait system that will build on glyphosate.
Your farm tells a story, one that continues with the decisions you make. Introducing the Enlist Weed Control System, an advanced herbicide and trait system that will build on glyphosate for exceptional control of tough weeds. The next chapter begins.
Our Weed of the Week is common milkweed.
This used to be a nightmare for us when we were kids because we used to have to walk soybeans, and common milkweed was the biggest weed problem out there. It's a perennial weed, and we're going to pull it and try and stop it?
Or hoe it, and either way, you wouldn't take out that root system.
And we're right back there.
In a week or two, yeah, everything would come right back. So then when Roundup came out, we thought, man, this is awesome. But here's what we learned with Roundup. Because milkweed has waxy leaves, even if you cover that plant, you just couldn't get enough to stick on there unless you had a good concentration of Roundup. What I'm trying to say is use lower water volumes and higher rates of Roundup and you'll have much better control.
So when you think about herbicide options, obviously the best one is Roundup, ultimately because you need something that's going to get down into the root system of a perennial weed. It's just a question of how you're going to get that Roundup to stick. So using a strong concentration of Roundup with the lowest amount of water the label allows you to use, that's a good idea. Also using some kind of sticker with it. A lot of times we'll use non-ionic surfactant to help it stick to those leaves. That would be a good recommendation as well. But when it comes to other herbicides, in soybeans, that gets to be a tough thing.
Yeah, there really isn't much you can do in soybeans. I don't know what it would be. I mean, there might be some things that might burn it back, a little Cobra or Flex Star, but we're really not talking control at all. Let's think about corn. You can do fairly decent with Status, Banvel, Dicamba. Those products will work fairly well, but keep in mind it's a perennial weed. You're probably not going to kill the whole root system, but at least you could burn it back.
Common milkweed isn't nearly as tough to control in wheat, in pastures, in roadside ditches, those kind of situations. In the non-crop areas, you can use something strong like Tordon. Out in wheat, you can use something like Husky at a strong rate. For the most part, the wheat is going to choke out the milkweed.
Well, that's it for our Weed of the Week, common milkweed, but stay tuned. Iron Talk is coming up next.
Iron Talk is brought to you by Case IH.
What are farmers doing to feed the planet? They're using Quadtrac technology, soil management, and planting systems from Case IH to foster a better growing environment that maximizes yield potential. Visit caseih.com to be ready.
Why should you use a 2x2 placement? I'll address that question in today's Iron Talk. More farmers across the country are looking for ways to add planting time applications outside the furrow for a variety of reasons. First, soybeans and some other crops simply can't tolerate much fertilizer in the furrow. Even moving 2 inches to the side and 2 inches below soybean seed, you can put a pretty good load of fertilizer on without creating a stressful environment for the seed. Second, some products you may want to use, like biologicals, may not be compatible with the fungicides or insecticides you're already putting in the furrow. Whether they create plugging issues or just work against each other, by placing them in 2 different spots, you can utilize the full strength of both products that you want to use. Third, you can only put so much fertilizer safely into the furrow, even with corn. You can't safely put 10 gallons of 1034-0 in furrow 100% of the time. In fact, in our farm, in 30-inch row corn, we never want to put more than 5 pounds of salt in the furrow. That equates to just 3 gallons of 1034-0. By adding the option of putting more fertilizer off to the side of the row, you can now put on as much as you need without risking injury to the seed. For these reasons and more, farmers across the country are taking another look at adding the capability of utilizing a 2x2 placement on their planters. The returns in soybeans may be enough to justify the system, but the flexibility it could give you in corn as well is a nice fit. That's all for today's Iron Talk, and now back to the show.
Looking to maximize yield? Quick Roots is a microbial seed inoculant that allows the plant root to explore a greater volume of soil, the key to higher yields. Quick Roots continues to generate yield response on corn, soybeans, wheat, and more. Quick Roots is applied to the seed so the live microorganisms go right to work, enhancing seedling vigor, increasing the uptake of certain nutrients, including NPK, and expanding root volume. Maximize yield on your farm this season. Call TJ Technologies or your local dealer and get your Quick Roots today.
The math for getting higher yield potentials is simple. 4 is greater than 2. Steiger Rowtrack Series tractors give you proven Case IH Quadtrac technology, helping you cover more acres in less time. And with 4 independent oscillating tracks, you'll also minimize ground pressure and compaction for a better growing environment, all of which adds up to higher potential yields. The world of farming is changing. Be ready with Case IH.
A farmer's attention to detail is what makes the difference. You take the time for service management because you know how vital it is to your operation. You service your field like everything else because soil sampling makes all the difference and gets the results you want. Download the app Soil Test Pro and start grid sampling today. Keep your farm growing strong. The more you test, the more you know.
Capello corn headers are designed for producers who expect more. Expect more grain in your bin. Expect an industry-leading 2-year manufacturer's warranty. Expect Capello-designed chopping and folding options that save you time and money. And whether red, green, or yellow, expect row size options that fit your operation because all producers deserve the best. Expect Capello. It's ahead above the rest.
Closed captioning for Ag PhD is sponsored by Norwood Sales.
The all-new S-Cube commercial tender is the only tender on the market with poly tanks, giving you the capability to haul seed, fertilizer, water, or liquid fertilizer. Each cube can hold 300 units of seed, 2,000 gallons of liquid, or 300 cubic feet of fertilizer. Options include full functioning wireless remote, stainless steel conveyors, and self-contained hydraulics. Get yours today at Norwood Sales.
That's all the time we have for this week's show, but be sure to tune in again next time for another Weed of the Week, Farm Basics, Iron Talk, and a whole lot more.
We also invite you to join us each weekday on SiriusXM Channel 80 for the live Ag PhD radio show. It airs at 3 p.m. Eastern or 2 p.m. Central.
I'm Darren Hefty.
And I'm Brian Hefty. Thanks for watching Ag PhD.
Plants actually tell farmers what nutrients they need. They don't do it verbally, but farmers get the information through plant tissue analysis. It's another way farmers practice responsible nutrient management. To learn more, visit rnmf.org.